I found myself on my knees. The prayers escaping my throat trembled, and the crucifix clutched in my hand threatened to slip away with my sweat. The nave was destroyed, pews splintered to pieces, the altar charred black, and before me stood it. I couldn't call its form human. Its shape flickered, outlines uncertain. Where its head should have had eyes, there were only hollows, leaking an eerie greenish light. Its mouth was a lipless gash, lined with multiple rows of sharp teeth. The stench of putrid flesh emanated from its entire body, burning my lungs.
Priest, you cannot stop anything.
Its voice was like metal scraping against metal, making the very air tremble. It took a step toward me, then another. The crucifix in my hand no longer felt like protection, and as it lunged at me, theatrical elements never suited my personality. Even when I became a priest, I thought faith required not flashy spectacles, but quiet conviction and discipline. Yet, the church always attracted the opposite, whether in the painful confessions in the confessional booth or the strange behaviors I encountered during my rounds. My first assignment after graduating from Catholic seminary was a small town called Whitewood, nestled at the foot of the Gabriel Mountains. A place with barely 500 people, too insignificant to appear on maps. The townspeople lived quietly, their faith the kind whispered in dim kitchens or on sun-beaten porches. My arrival was met with polite but cold reception. When I approached, whispered conversations would cease, and glances directed at me would quickly look away. They needed me there, but they seemed afraid of something. However, they never directly mentioned what they feared. The first time I heard about the rules was during an ordinary confession. Martha Finch, a woman, whispered through the confessional grate with a trembling voice.
Father, it comes every few years. We keep the doors locked. We leave no light.
Before I could ask what it was, she hurriedly began confessing her sins, minor complaints about a neighbor, lapses in patience with her children. When I tried to get more details, she shook her head and fled the confessional, swallowing her words. At the time, I thought she was delusional and didn't chase after her. But later, I would piece it all together. One night, as I prepared for bed, a violent knocking echoed at the rectory door. When I opened it, a boy no older than 10 stood there. Noah Adams was his name. His eyes were wide open, his breathing shallow, already possessed by terror. "Father," he gasped, "it's here." Before I could question him, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the edge of the forest. There, waiting for us, was the boy's father, Ethan Adams, a gaunt man with a stern expression. He clutched a shotgun in both hands. Without speaking, he merely nodded and led us forward. Deep in the forest, we encountered the carcass of a deer, or what had once been a deer. Its body had been torn apart, ribs protruding outward as if they had burst from within. The flesh was covered with a thick, black slime-like substance, and the stench was unlike anything I had ever experienced, metallic and putrid, as if the meat itself was rotting at an accelerated rate. "Tracks," the man muttered, pointing to the ground. They were enormous, clawed, and strangely deformed, like the footprints of a biped that hadn't fully mastered walking upright. Before I could comprehend the situation, a low growl vibrated through the trees. The boy screamed, and his father raised the shotgun. But the sound was cut short by something moving through the branches above, something too fast to follow. I caught only glimpses, a leathery, elongated body, too many limbs, something more like a collection of moving parts than a face. "Go back to the church," the father commanded. I didn't argue. I ran. But whatever it was didn't follow us. The next day, their house was empty, their belongings abandoned, with no sign of the two. I wanted to ask the townspeople about them, but I didn't want to hear their answers, or perhaps I was afraid. In the days that followed, I became abnormally cautious about locking doors. The church doors, the rectory doors, windows, all secured with double, triple locks. But on sleepless nights, I was haunted by the fear that locks alone wouldn't stop it. The memory of those tracks in the forest remained vivid. That black slime, that putrid smell, and most of all, why hadn't that something chased us after we fled from the forest? It was almost as if it had wanted us to see. The following year, a new confessional booth was delivered. The old one had warped wood and threadbare curtains, having been in use longer than anyone could remember. I should have thrown it out. Instead, out of some misplaced sentimentality, I kept it in the storage room. I soon came to regret that decision. One evening, after locking up the church, I heard a faint rustling sound coming from the storage room. I thought it was mice and decided to deal with it in the morning. But the sound persisted, growing louder, like fabric tearing, accompanied by soft whispers. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. The old confessional stood there, but its curtain was moving as if caught in a breeze. I knew this was impossible. The room was sealed with no draft. With my heart pounding, I approached and pulled the curtain aside. There was nothing inside. No mice. No source of the sound. Just the empty booth. I let the curtain fall and turned to leave, but the whispering began again. Louder. Clearer. "Father," said a woman's voice. I spun around. The curtain was now open, and seated inside was a figure. A woman, her face pale and blurred, as if seen through frosted glass. Her lips were moving, but the words came too fast, overlapping and incomprehensible. I instinctively reached out. The moment my fingers touched the wood, the image vanished. The next morning, I burned the confessional, but the whispers didn't stop for 3 days. They no longer came from the confessional, but seemed to emanate directly from within my ears. They spoke of the town's history, of it, and of light, how the townspeople hid in darkness, how they sealed their windows to prevent light from escaping. If light escapes, it will find you. It will choose you. From then on, I extinguished all lights in the church at nightfall, and the townspeople did the same, turning off all lights after dark. There weren't even street lamps. In this town, darkness meant safety, but darkness concealed other terrors. It was during my 5th year that I met him. Or it. I'm still not sure. The man appeared unremarkable at first glance, middle-aged, neatly dressed, with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He attended Mass regularly, always sitting in the back pew, always leaving before communion. I didn't think much of him until one evening when he stayed after the service. "Father," he said in a low, deliberate voice, "may I speak with you privately?" We went to my office where he sat across from me, hands neatly folded on his lap. His gaze was unsettling, not because of its intensity, but because of its emptiness. "I've seen you in dreams," he said.
You've seen me too, haven't you?
I started to respond, but he interrupted me.
No, don't answer. I already know.
As he spoke, I noticed his eyes. They were black, not dark brown, not hazel, but pure, liquid black reflecting nothing. He smiled again, wider this time, revealing too many teeth. "I've been here a long time," he continued.
Longer than you. Longer than this town. I just wanted to thank you, Father, for keeping the door open.
"What door?" At my question, his smile widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker across his face, a second set of features, grotesque and angular. "You'll see," he said, standing abruptly. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back at me. Soon, he never attended Mass again. A week later, the rectory basement flooded for no apparent reason. The water was ice cold and pitch black. That night, I recited every prayer I could remember. The water from the basement couldn't be drained. If anything, it seemed to be increasing. That strange black water began creeping up the stairs, and soon it would engulf the entire rectory. The black-eyed man's words kept echoing in my mind. Thank you for keeping the door open. What door had I opened? When? Why? I opened the Bible by flickering candlelight, searching for answers. And there, I found a reference to the door. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. Revelation 3:20. This verse confronted me with my sin. I had invited him in. I had welcomed him into my office, even though I sensed what he was. I should have been more vigilant. I should have been stronger. Outside the window, something moved. I froze. It had a human shape, but its movements were unnatural, jerky, awkward. A shadow fell across the window, slowly changing form. It was fingers. Long, bony fingers scratching at the glass. In the next moment, the figure was gone. I made the sign of the cross with trembling hands. Tomorrow, I would have to contact the bishop. Something had begun, and I had to stop it. The church had an attic, a cramped, dusty space filled with forgotten relics and boxes of records no one cared to sort, which I rarely visited. One night, as I prepared a sermon, I heard singing drifting down from above, faint and off-key, like a choir warming up. I climbed the narrow stairs, flashlight in hand. As I ascended, the sound grew louder, turning into an unfamiliar hymn. The words were in a foreign language, guttural yet strangely melodic. At the top of the stairs, I stopped. The attic was dark, but I could make out the silhouettes of figures, dozens of them, standing in neat rows, their faces turned toward me. Their features were indistinct, as if carved from wax and left too close to a fire. They swayed as they sang, their movements jerky and unnatural. "Stop!" I commanded, my voice breaking. The singing stopped immediately. One by one, the figures turned and walked toward the far wall. As they moved, they dissolved into the darkness. When the last one disappeared, the attic light flickered on. I never went up there again. The next morning, I visited Sarah Coleman, the oldest resident in town. At 102, she was a living witness to the town's history. "Why is there a church in this town, Sarah?" I asked. "Why is it so important?" She stared at me, then finally spoke.
This land is special. Always has been. The natives avoided it, called it a thin place, where the boundaries are thin.
"What boundaries?"
Between worlds, she whispered. The church was built here to guard, to keep the door closed.
"And the rules?" I asked. "For survival," she answered.
Rules learned over generations. Lock your doors. Leave no light. And never, ever go up to the attic.
"Why?" "Climb up." And they climbed down, she said.
What you saw in the attic, those are them from the other side of the door. They've seen you now. They know you. You've been found, Father.
It was a dreary winter afternoon, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I had opened the church early, lighting candles to dispel the gloom. A few regular parishioners came and went, and then she arrived alone, her small frame silhouetted against the massive oak doors. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, wearing a pale blue dress that seemed oddly thin for the weather. She walked slowly down the aisle, her footsteps almost silent, before slipping into the confessional. I followed, wondering if she had wandered in by mistake. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," she began. She recited the opening lines with the precision of someone who had rehearsed them, her voice sweet and hesitant. "What sins would you like to confess, my child?" There was a long silence. Then her voice returned, but it was no longer hers.
You cannot save sinners, Father.
The words came out in a guttural voice, like stones grinding together. They already belonged to me. Before I could respond, she began speaking again, but this time in a childlike voice with a sing-song quality, like a poem or a chant. Her voice echoed through the confessional.
They come with their guilt, their whispers, their lies, but their souls are mine when the body dies. Their prayers fall flat, their tears turn cold, for faith won't save what I already hold. You stand at the altar, you preach and you pray, but every sinner you bless will wither away. My chains are forged, their links are tight, and I'll drag them all screaming into the night.
My hands gripped the sides of the wooden seat as if anchoring myself to reality. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask. The girl laughed, a high-pitched, sharp sound that couldn't belong to a child. It reverberated, seeming to come from everywhere. "You already know, Father," she said. And just like that, she was gone. I stumbled out of the confessional on shaking legs. The girl was nowhere to be seen, and the church was empty. The only evidence she had been there at all was the faint smell of sulfur. I was haunted by the same thoughts all night. Who was she? Was she connected to the black-eyed man? And most of all, what did her words mean? And the door, was it already open? Or did I still have a chance to close it? A few weeks later, I was called to perform a blessing at a nearby home. The family, a young couple with an infant, had recently moved in, and strange occurrences had begun almost immediately. Doors opening and closing on their own, a cold draft that never dissipated, and most disturbingly, the sound of a woman sobbing late at night. When I arrived, the house felt wrong. There was a faint smell of decay, and pockets of cold air hung like pools throughout the rooms. The family, James Miller, his wife Emily, and their baby Rose, looked haggard and sleep-deprived. "She comes every night," Emily explained, clutching the baby to her chest.
Always the same time. Midnight. We hear her crying, but when we go to check, there's no one there.
I performed the usual rites, sprinkling holy water in every corner of the house and reciting prayers of exorcism. The moment I finished, the sobbing began. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it grew louder with each passing second. It wasn't just crying. It was wailing, raw, guttural, the sound of unimaginable pain. It came from upstairs. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound. The master bedroom was empty, but the sobbing was now deafening. As I turned to leave, I saw her. She stood in the corner of the room, facing the wall. Her figure was clad in a wedding dress, yellowed with age, its hem tattered and stained. A veil obscured her face, but I could see strands of hair sticking out at odd angles, damp and clinging to the fabric. "Leave," I commanded, holding up the crucifix. My voice was steady, but my hands shook. And most terrifying of all, in the family photographs, Wesley bore a striking resemblance to someone I knew, the black-eyed man. The church bell hadn't rung in years. It was cracked, its mechanism rusted beyond repair. Yet one night, long after I had retired to bed, it began to toll. I sat up immediately, the sound jarring in the stillness. It wasn't the melodic chime I remembered from years ago. It was a harsh, uneven clanging, as if someone were striking it with brute force. Grabbing my coat, I hurried to the bell tower. The climb was grueling, the ancient staircase groaning under my weight. When I reached the top, the bell was swinging wildly, though there was no wind and no sign of anyone who could have set it in motion. And then I saw a figure hunched in the corner. Its head was bowed, and its hands, gnarled and skeletal, clutched a length of frayed rope. "Who are you?" I called out. The figure slowly raised its head. It was no longer a human face. The flesh had rotted away, exposing the skull beneath, and a yellowish light leaked from the hollow eye sockets. The jaw opened, and words spilled out. "Sehite, Kyohapada no, Morikeru." The words were unintelligible to me, but I sensed they were some kind of warning. The figure stared at me, tilting its head as if studying me, and then its entire body began to shake. Its skin cracked, oozing a black, mucus-like substance. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Kahan Makago Chiru, tonight the curtain falls," it answered. "Karara Hakitaru, they are coming." The figure reached for me, and I recoiled, nearly losing my footing on the narrow platform. But before it could touch me, the bell let out one final, ear-splitting toll. The figure dissolved into smoke, leaving behind only the frayed rope, which fell to the floor in a heap. The next morning, I called a senior priest and asked him about it. "Have you met the black-eyed man?" he asked immediately. "And the bell tower figure as well?" "Yes, both," I replied. "What is happening?" There was a long silence. "They are omens, the guardians of the entrance. You must have broken a rule." "Which rule?" "Lock your doors. Leave no light. Never go to the attic. And ye never call what comes by its name." As the years passed, the occurrences grew stranger and more frequent. Each one felt like a test, a trial meant to wear me down. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened last summer. It was late in the evening, and I was closing the church when I noticed a man standing by the altar. He was facing away from me, his posture rigid. "I'm sorry, we're closed," I called, but he didn't move. As I cautiously approached, I realized he wasn't standing but hovering, his feet a few inches off the ground. His head snapped around to face me. It was the black-eyed man. "You should have listened," he said, his voice layered, as if multiple voices spoke through him. "To the girl, to the bride, to all of them." "Listen to what?" I demanded. "They warned you," he said, stepping toward me.
You thought you could save them, but you can't. They belong to me.
I raised the crucifix, but he laughed, a hollow, bone-chilling sound that made the walls tremble.
It's too late, Father. The door is open.
With that, he vanished, leaving me alone in the silent church. I've never been one to seek out confrontation. My role, as I've always understood it, was to guide and protect through faith, not through force. But after the black-eyed man's warning, after hearing those words again, "The door is open," I knew I couldn't remain idle. What was happening wasn't just supernatural mischief or a test of faith. Something bigger was coming, and it wouldn't stop until it consumed everything. I began preparing that very night. The rituals of exorcism had always been a last resort for me, but I could no longer avoid them. I dug out the old texts, the ones I'd studied in seminary but hoped I'd never need. I called the diocese for permission, and though they were hesitant, more concerned with scandal than salvation, they ultimately approved. What the black-eyed man had said about the door haunted me. I didn't know what door he meant or how it had been opened, but I was determined to close it. I researched every scrap of lore I could find that might give me an advantage. Weeks passed, each night filled with restless study and uneasy silence. The church felt darker now, its walls pressing in on me. And then, just as I feared, the final confrontation came to me. It was a stormy evening, lightning carving jagged scars across the sky. The air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. I was alone in the rectory when I heard the front doors of the church slam open. The sound echoed through the halls, followed by a low, guttural laugh that sent a chill up my spine. Grabbing my crucifix and the exorcism kit, I stepped into the nave. There, at the center of the aisle, stood the black-eyed man. His form flickered, as if he were caught between this world and another. His grin was wider than ever, his teeth glinting like shards of glass. "I told you, Father," he said, spreading his arms.
The door is open.
I held my ground, clutching the crucifix tightly. "I don't care what door you've opened. You're not staying." He laughed again, a sound that seemed to reverberate inside my skull.
Oh, I'm not staying. But he is.
The air around him shimmered, distorting like heat waves. Then the shimmer expanded, splitting open to reveal a gaping rift, a doorway. From it poured a foul wind, carrying with it the stench of decay and a chorus of agonized screams. Something was coming through. It emerged slowly, as if savoring its arrival. First came the claws, then the head, grotesque and malformed, with a wide, lipless mouth revealing jagged rows of teeth. Its eyes were empty sockets, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. Its body followed, a hulking mass of sinew and bone. The demon let out a guttural roar that shook the very foundations of the church. The black-eyed man stepped aside, bowing mockingly. "All yours, Father," he said before vanishing into thin air. The demon turned its eyeless gaze toward me and spoke in a voice like grinding metal, words dripping with malice. "Priest, you cannot stop what has begun." I took a step forward, raising the crucifix. "This is the house of God. You will not defile it." It roared again, the sound deafening, and lunged. I barely had time to move, diving behind one of the pews as its claws tore through the air where I had been standing. The wood splintered under its strike, sending shards flying. I began the rite of exorcism, my voice trembling but determined. "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you, depart from this place." The demon laughed, a hideous, choking sound.
Your words are weak, priest. Your faith is weak.
It struck again, this time at the altar. The sacred space erupted into flames, the fire consuming the cloth and candles in an instant. I felt panic rise in my chest, but suppressed it. I couldn't give in to fear. I continued the rite, moving carefully to maintain distance between myself and the creature. It was fast, unnaturally so, but clumsy in its movements, as if its form was too large for this world. I used that to my advantage, ducking behind pillars and weaving through the pews as it pursued me. At one point, it cornered me, its massive form blocking my escape. It raised a clawed hand to strike, but I thrust the crucifix forward, pressing it against its flesh. The reaction was immediate. Smoke rose where the cross made contact, and the demon howled in pain, a guttural sound. It recoiled, giving me enough time to scramble away. "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit," I shouted, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I command you, leave this place." The demon's form began to flicker, its edges dissolving like ash caught in a breeze. But it wasn't done yet. With a final, desperate roar, it charged, claws outstretched. But I had prepared for this. In my studies, I'd learned of a binding ritual, a way to trap a demon within a consecrated space until it could be banished entirely. It was risky, requiring the demon to willingly enter the circle, but I had no other choice. I led it toward the altar, where I had drawn the circle earlier that evening, hidden beneath the rug. As it closed in, I stepped into the center, raising the crucifix high. "Come then," I taunted, my voice steady. "Come and face the light." The demon hesitated, its eyeless sockets narrowing as if sensing the trap. But its rage overpowered its caution, and it lunged at me. The moment its claws crossed the boundary of the circle, the symbols flared to life. glowing with an intense golden light. The demon let out an ear-splitting scream, thrashing wildly as the circle's power held it in place. I began the final incantation, my voice rising above the demon's howls. By the power of Christ, I bind you. By his blood, I condemn you. Return to the pit from which you came. The light grew brighter, surrounding the demon completely. Its form writhed, shrinking and collapsing in on itself as it was pulled back through the rift. With one final, deafening roar, it vanished, and the rift closed with a thunderous crack. The silence that followed was deafening. The flames at the altar had extinguished themselves, leaving only scorched wood and the faint smell of smoke. The church was in shambles, pews overturned, statues shattered, but it was over. The demon was gone. I collapsed to my knees, clutching the crucifix tightly. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to pray, not out of desperation, but out of gratitude. In the weeks that followed, I repaired the church piece by piece, with help from the congregation. Many of them had heard the commotion that night but hadn't dared to enter. When they saw the damage, they asked questions, but I gave them only vague answers. The truth would have been too much for them. The black-eyed man never returned. The rift didn't reopen. Whatever door had been unlocked was now firmly shut, sealed by faith and fire. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. I knew it might not last, that evil has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest walls. But for now, the church still stood as a sanctuary, a place of light in the darkness. It's been a year since then. The church has been restored, and the congregation has returned. On the surface, everything seems to have returned to normal, but I am changed. I wake up at night now, listening. Sometimes I think I hear whispers in the wind. It's not over yet. They say, the rules were simple. Lock your doors. Leave no light. Never go to the attic. Never call what comes by its name. But I've learned the most important rule. Once you know, you become part of it. I write this as a warning. If you're reading these words, you too have learned. You too have become part of it. They are watching you. They will come to you in your dreams. They know your name. And the black-eyed man? He promised he would return. I want to believe he lied. But last night, I saw his figure by my window. He was staring, smiling. And this morning, I noticed the basement door was open. What happens when you encounter them is up to you. Please remember to follow the rules. Lock your doors. Leave no light. Never go to the attic. Never call them by their name. And above all, if they whisper, never, ever listen. Because now you know too.